My name is Mark Quinlivan. I'm the Social Studies Coordinator for Laramie County School District Number 1. And I can't overstate how important it is to get our young people involved in civics and in learning about our government and participating in our government. The right to vote is something that should be cherished in our country. It should be exercised in our country. And in order to be a well-informed voter, students and adults for that matter need to really make a point of learning about the candidates. They need to find out their positions. I have always said that it's not my position to say this candidate's better than that candidate. That's for somebody's own personal opinion, but it is very important that everybody get out and vote, and it makes our democracy strong and it makes our country strong.
Good evening. I'm Rosalind Shalisky, a member of the Cheyenne League of Women Voters. This is the fourth of 7 forums sponsored by the Cheyenne League and the Wyoming Tribune-Eagle for the 2018 general election. Welcome to all of you and in this school board room, and those of you who will watch online. Tonight, the League of Women Voters is recording this forum and will post it on YouTube. Links will be sent to candidates, posted on the Cheyenne League of Women Voter Facebook page, and will be sent to people who send requests to CheyenneLWV@gmail.com. Upcoming forums are as follows. Our next one will be on Tuesday, October 23rd, for House Districts 8, 11, and 12 from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. in the City Council chambers of the Municipal Building. Next will be on Thursday, October 25th, for House Districts 10, 41, 42, and 44, again, from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. in the City Council chambers of the Municipal Building. The final forum will be on Tuesday, October 30th, for Laramie County District Attorney from 12:30 to 1:30 in the Kiwanis Community House at Lions Park. Early voting continues in the atrium of the Laramie County Governmental Complex through Monday, November 5th. You may request an absentee ballot as well as obtain information about how and where to register and to vote from the county clerk's office. Election day is Tuesday, November 6th, and you may vote in any of the vote centers in the county. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization, open to all, that works to help people to become involved in their government, to be informed, and to vote. We hope these forums help provide some information, but we urge people to check out the candidates' materials and to contact them with other questions. The Wyoming League of Women Voters has written a list of 5 principles of campaign integrity. We hope these principles help voters evaluate candidates and their campaigns. We also hope candidates endorse the principles and observe them as they campaign. These 5 principles are: 1, candidates will defend the right of every qualified Wyoming voter to full and equal participation in the electoral process. 2, candidates will conduct honest and open campaigns, stating the sources of facts used in their campaigns. 3, candidates will stick to the campaign issues in their statements, debates, advertisements, and news releases. They will not permit the use of character defamation or other attacks on opponents' personal or family lives. 4, candidates will disavow assertions that misrepresent, distort, or otherwise falsify the facts. And finally, 5, candidates will publicly reject actions by supporters that violate these principles. Tonight, the League wants to thank Laramie County School District Number 1 for allowing us to use this facility. 4 seats are open on the 7-member Board of Trustees for Laramie County School District Number 1. 11 candidates are running. The office is nonpartisan, so candidates do not run as nominees from a political party. The term is 4 years with no term limit. There is no pay. Am I the first to tell you this? Okay, just making sure. There is no pay. For our forum tonight, candidates will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves and to explain why they are seeking the office. We will have about an hour for questions, giving each candidate a minute and a half to answer with an optional 30 seconds to comment based on others' responses. We will close with a final 2 minutes in which candidates may sum up or add anything they wish. We will rotate the starting point for answers, so everyone will have a chance to start around. Candidates, if you need a question repeated, just ask the student moderator to do so. This forum is an exercise in civics for local students who participated in writing questions for the forum and who are moderating tonight. You know, one reason we hear from young people that they don't vote is they don't see how elections affect them. In this case, all students should appreciate the connections between the school board and their education. And for all our forums, we ask the audience to observe basic rules of respect and decorum, letting the candidates answer the questions without interruption.
I am Katie Smith, a junior at East High School. Our timer tonight will be league member Pat Hayes. So now we're going to go over who the candidates are, and if I pronounce your name wrong, please correct me. Our candidates are Brittany Ashby, Paulette Gadlin, Marguerite Herman, Rich Wiederspan, Christy Clausen, Philip Rogeski, Rose Ann Millian-Rennie, and Tara Russell. So, tonight to begin, you will have 2 minutes to introduce yourselves and to explain why you are seeking this office. Ms. Ashby, will you begin?
Absolutely. So my name is Brittany Ashby. I currently serve on the Laramie County School District Board. I've never run a campaign. This is my first round, so this is an adventure for any of you that have done it before. I was appointed by the board in December to fill a spot and have had about 10 months to serve and get a better understanding of what's happening in our district, what the issues are, and what kinds of things the board really should focus on and look at. Why do I want to run? I enjoy living in a vibrant, thriving community and state, and I think that we don't have that. We won't continue to have that if we don't have strong public schools. And so I think it is up to us to help give back to our community in any way that we think we can, and I believe that I have the knowledge, the skills, and abilities that could be helpful to help improve our schools, help look at what the issues are and help fill gaps, and to really provide the best environment possible for our kids, our families, and our teachers.
Ms. Gadlin, you have 2 minutes.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity. I have never thought there was any better place to raise my children than Cheyenne. As I watched my children walk across the stage and receive their diplomas, it left a great feeling of pride, not only for my children, but for the education that they received in this district. I believe that no matter how good something can be, it could always be better. Laramie County School District Number 1 has many great qualities, and parents, students, and employees all play a part in making this district successful. My primary goals as a member of the board are in 3 categories. We know the board student achievement is number 1. I tend to work that students can receive the best education possible. I will ensure that the educational goals are respected no matter what they would like to do to prepare students for college, vocational education, the military, or whatever their future goals might be. I believe that the school board is a collaborative model and that I will have an open door policy, and I want to make this district even better than what it is now. Thank you.
Ms. Herman, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Marguerite Herman, and I'm running for re-election to my second term on the Laramie County School District No. 1 Board of Trustees. What I bring to this job and this trust is I have professional backgrounds and master's degrees in education and communication, and I have extensive experience on local and state boards for the State Board of Nursing, Wyoming Children's Trust Fund, PTA, Cheyenne Schools Foundation, Camilla Homeless Shelter, and the League of Women Voters. I'm the state coordinator for the Wyoming High School mock trial. I have demonstrated a commitment to excellent education by more than 30 years of advocacy for equitable school funding and involvement in Laramie 1 programs. I'm the proud mother of 3 Laramie 1 graduates. I had to put that in. Why 4 more years? Well, I bring to the board a commitment and ability to work hard to ensure continued excellence of our district. I'm level-headed, evidence-based, and I take the long view to address problems. I am proud of Laramie 1 programs that serve the broad spectrum of students entrusted to us by their families. I'm proud of programs for the gifted musicians, dramatists, athletes, for the academically high-achieving and academically struggling, for the special needs students, for the students headed to college, career, and military. And I am proud of the excellent faculty and staff who teach those programs. I am proud of our school nurses, nutrition services, bus drivers, secretaries, specialists, and custodians, everyone who cares for our students so they are ready to learn. I'm proud of administrators who provide leadership and support for our employees. I'm proud of our leadership as the state's largest school district to speak truth to power when necessary. And all this takes hard work, which I am eager to do, and that is why I'm running. Thank you.
Mr. Wiederstein, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. I would want to take this opportunity to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this event tonight and giving us an opportunity to be here. I'm running for the board because I have a passion for education and a deep respect for the school district. I view this position as an opportunity for me to give back to my community and to be a new voice on the board. I've worked for 30 years in public education in the state of Wyoming. I've been an elementary resource room teacher, central office administrator, and a building principal. I've also worked for the city of Cheyenne in the capacity of director of human resources, and I've served on the Cheyenne City Council. I believe that my education, background, and experience have really given me the skills necessary to be a successful board member. I'm a good listener, I get along well with others, and I know what it means to be a part of a team. I volunteer in my community. I'm a volunteer child advocate for CASA of Laramie County, and I volunteer at Cheyenne Regional Medical Center. And I really look forward to the opportunity to serve on the board if I should be honored enough to be elected, and I would ask for your vote on November 6th. Thank you.
Ms. Clausen, you have 2 minutes.
My name is Christy Clausen, and I'm running for the school board because I want to make a positive impact on our community. I have 3 school-aged children, and so I have a vested, very personal interest in the success of our district, maximizing the potential of each of our students. As in terms of my background and experience, I work as a substitute teacher right now. I've worked in 19 of our schools around the district. K through 12th grade, I've been in special needs, and I've also taught in IB classes and everything in between. So that's given me a very valuable perspective and insight into the opportunities and the challenges that our district is facing right now. I also have worked in government affairs in Washington, D.C. before I had children, And I served as part of that time as professional staff for a bipartisan government commission. So I understand board dynamics. I have the skills, the experience, and I have the skills and experience to be an effective leader. If I am elected a trustee, I will work to improve student outcomes, carefully manage our district resources, prioritize school safety and security, and provide responsive leadership. Listening and to the input and the concerns of our community and the parents, I think, is very important. Thank you.
Mr. Rudeski, you have 2 minutes.
Well, one of well, I should introduce myself. I'm a civil engineer professional. I have a bachelor's and master's degree in engineering, and I own an engineering firm here in Cheyenne that I've owned for 33 years. And we do work throughout the western United States, and we design schools and commercial buildings, residential buildings. We supervise construction of those buildings and often put together the programs for maintenance of those buildings. And that is really the reason why I'm running. That is something that's been missing from the board for as long as I've known. The board, the school district, is one of the largest landowners and owners of buildings in Laramie County, maybe the largest. And so someone who has the skills that I have to know the ways to maintain and build and decide what facilities should be used and what should be kept and changed. I mean, all of those things are really important. So that's where my skill is for this board, and that's why I'm running.
Ms. Rennie, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. We have a daughter that started at Buffalo Ridge in 2005. She was a senior at East High School, went through the IB program last year. A lot of people in the community think I'm kind of a professional volunteer. I take it very seriously. I started my service for the district as a volunteer for Buffalo Ridge Elementary when my daughter was a kindergartner in 2005. I served as the president of the District Parent Advisory Committee for the past several years, which provided opportunities to work on several internal committees and boards within the district. In addition, I planned and organized major fundraisers for the Children's Village, the Boys and Girls Club, and the Wyoming Congressional Award Program. My involvement has given me extensive insight into how the district functions, and we have many strengths, but we still have to continue to achieve innovative programs. We need to continue to upgrade our facilities and strive to have safe schools. I've had the privilege to meet and work with dedicated and hardworking teachers, staff, and administrators. We need to continue our work here, and it's constantly growing and constantly changing. Education cannot stay the same. I don't want my child to have the same education, even though I had a great education in Wheatland. I don't want her to have the same education. I want that education to grow and be better all the time. As a board member, I would view the district as a whole. I do not believe in representing just one triad. Every child should have equal access to and support of all educational opportunities in the district. Providing a quality education improves and strengthens our community and state. Through all of my service, I have worked to increase parental understanding and involvement, and I have the experience and time to dedicate myself to working at LCSD 1 and our community to improve our children's education.
Ms. Russell, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you for having not only me but all of us tonight. I think it's important, the more types of events that you do like this, to inform voters of all ages. I'm Tara Russell. I am a current substitute teacher within Wyoming. I'm working on my 2nd year. I am an LCCC graduate. I hold an Associate of Arts in Education. I have 2 boys that both go to school in this district. I'm a very avid and active volunteer, so I volunteer at both of their schools, and I also serve as the current president of the PTO. I am running for school board because I have a vested interest having young kids within our district. My experience as a substitute teacher in several of our schools across the district, I think, gives me a lot of the inner workings and the day-to-day processes in, some of our schools, elementary, junior high, and high school. And I think it's very important to have a parent perspective on the school board in order for it to stay diverse. I don't know a parent is an important stakeholder within a district. And I'm also running because I would like to continue to make a positive impact on a broader spectrum, and not just within the schools that I've been teaching in. Thank you again for having us.
So now we will move to questions that were submitted by students. You will have 1.5 minutes to answer each question. The first question is, what do you believe is the proper balance between instructional time, and standardized testing? Ms. Gadlin, you may begin.
Testing is important, and I do believe in the Y-top, I think is what it's called now. We do that 3 times a year. But most of all, we need to give teachers time to teach and for children to learn. Can't constantly weigh children. But I do think that testing is important, and I think that the time that testing is given should be left to the discretion of the teacher. Thank you.
Ms. Herman, you have 1.5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. And I know instructional time is precious, every minute of the day, and I know that our assistant superintendent for instruction is very careful about allowing things in the school day that take away from instructional time, because I think they've kind of computed that, speaking of testing, instructional time produces better test scores. I think that testing, we try to keep it to, I think, like 1% of school time, and which seems small enough. But I agree that we need tests. I think our legislature insists on numbers, and our constituents and our stakeholders want a number. They want an achievement. So assuming tests are in there, I think the balance is how you work it in and make it reinforce what's being taught in instructional time. You make it relate directly to what is in our curriculum, in the standards or state standards and our local curriculum. So you make sure that it reinforces it. It's not just tacked on to produce a number that is handy for our policymakers. So I think the balance is achieved in how it's designed and how it's used to support each other. And again, I kind of agree with Mrs. Gavin. Let's trust the teachers, and if it looks like it's taking away from instruction time or emotional energy, then it's time to look at it and maybe work it back. Thank you.
Mr. Wiederspahn, you have 1.5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. So during the campaign, I've talked quite a bit with constituents and colleagues about instructional time, because I think it's something the school district needs to track. Because I think the question really remains, are our students getting enough instructional time, time on task, time in front of a teacher in a classroom setting, versus the amount of time that they spend taking tests, whether standardized tests or classroom formative tests. I would say the proportion in my mind would be 90% instruction and 10% testing, or I might even go 95% instruction and the remainder 5% testing. I can't think of a teacher that I worked with that would have preferred to do more testing as opposed to instruction. They know they're there to teach children, and the only way that we're going to impact student achievement test scores is to have them spend large chunks of time in front of a teacher in a classroom setting. So I think instructional time has to be closely and carefully guarded, because if our students aren't achieving the kind of scores that we want them to, we need to increase the amount of instructional time that they're getting. Thank you.
Ms. Clausen, you have 1.5 minutes.
I would agree that we do need to have testing to be able to measure how we're doing as a district, but we should be keeping that to a minimum. I also would support, and I'm glad to see the districts move to, or the states move to YTOP testing, because I think we need to support and really focus in on the results of those tests to identify students that are falling behind and struggling, so that they can get the intervention they need, the individualized instruction they need to be able to improve their scores and to get the help they need from their teacher.
Mr. Rudeski, you have 1.5 minutes.
Thank you. I've learned through the years, through all the work that I've done, that when you need something done right, you hire a professional to do it, someone who knows a trade. And I have a 16-year-old daughter that's in East High currently. And so I've gotten to know the teachers and the administrators, and I have tremendous respect, especially for those teachers. They know what, I have a pretty good idea that they know what they're doing. And so when it comes to instructional time and testing time, I think that's an issue that should be left up to every individual teacher.
Ms. Rennie, you have 1.5 minutes.
Thank you. We have state and federal guidelines that we have to follow when we're looking at standardized testing. So sometimes that doesn't leave us a lot of wiggle rooms. One of the things that I like about the new standard reference-based grading is that it gives teachers an opportunity to do formal and informal assessments. But as far as the YTOP, that's a very standardized, it's a new test. So all the information that you guys are going to see in a week or so now on November 1st, it plays into the achievement portion of that standardized test. Those numbers are going to be a little surprising. I just finished with the Wyoming Department of Education and the Wyoming Board of Education a few weeks ago with making the recommendations for the cut scores for that. So there's a lot of education, a lot of growth that needs to go there, but it is a good test. It's aligned with our state standards, so we are going to see that go up. We have to have a way of measuring and assessing our kids, and unfortunately, standardized tests are one of the ways that we use to do that. And we also get funding, everything's all attached that way, so it's kind of hard to say that. I think there's other things we can do in the classroom, like addressing behavioral issues that take away from instructional time. I think that is probably something we have a little more control over, or hopefully we'll have more control over as we grow and develop these new behavioral plans and policies. So I believe that standardized testing and testing is a necessary evil. Thank you.
Ms. Russell, you have 1.5 minutes.
This is a great question, thank you. Testing and assessing can be a great tool for tracking the growth of each student. I feel that it is not always merited, and the outcome might not always be merited. You might have a student that really thrives and does exceptionally well with their instruction and learning and their retention inside of the classroom, but they may suffer with test anxiety, and so that can really affect their scores on any test. I feel that instructional time with the student and teacher is a great way to build a relationship, and I feel like the better relationship that a teacher has with their students, that those students feel like they can be heard and they feel respected and listened to, and I feel like in that environment they then just naturally progress towards learning more in that environment and retaining those things that they're trying to learn. Too much assessing is a lot of work for the teacher, and it can be stressful on them and a lot of work for the student, and I think that takes away from everyone's educational experience. Thank you.
Ms. Ashby, you have a minute and a half.
Thank you. So I agree with almost everything. I think most of us have agreed on this particular point, that in an ideal world, if we were to get to wave our magic wands and say, this is what we're going to do, that we would spend as much of the time as possible on the education and the classroom time with the teachers, the professionals that have been trained to do that. I think there's a fair amount of research that shows that, that is really the ideal situation. However, those tests are a tool. They're a tool that, as was pointed out, all the way down the line, they're a tool that show growth for the students, ideally. They're a tool that the teachers can use to determine how they're going to adjust curriculum, how they're going to do that. But they're also how we as a society are measuring success, because we haven't found any better ways to do that. And I think it's up to the board, this body, and to the district to continue to look at, are there other ways that we can measure that success and hold ourselves accountable to providing that education that doesn't revolve around those numbers. I do think it's an easy answer. Tests are an easy thing to put in front of a student and pull the numbers. Roseanne may disagree with me giving cut scores, but I think it's important that we continue to look at how we're measuring that success, and hopefully that'll continue to move us in the right direction.
Candidates, if you would like, you may have 30 seconds to respond to other comments. Mr. Wierspan?
Yes, thank you. I would just make a comment about testing generally, and I think to the extent that it helps a teacher guide instruction, modify instruction to her students or his students, I think that is the most valuable kind of testing that happens in the classroom. So I think that we need to make sure that those results are available. I know the YTOP test uses rubrics, and I think it's going to be more of a formative as opposed to a summative test, and I think it's going to be more valuable for the classroom teacher.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Ms. Hunter?
Just briefly, just to add, agreeing that the tests are supposed to directly inform the teacher and the methods. That the legislature, the word is accountability, and everybody needs accountability for how well the teachers are doing, how well schools are doing, how well a district is doing. And I think this white top actually shows, if you think about the original pause and all the tests we've gone through, I think the one we have now, let's try it a few years and see how it works out. I think it actually will prove itself.
Thank you. Ms. Russell?
The testing is a great tool. I feel like to see where a student's starting point is, how they've learned, where maybe they need to go for the teacher, but the continual assessment of all of those kids within a classroom, a teacher may have anywhere from 18 kids to 28 kids in that class. That's continually what they are doing. It doesn't leave a lot of time for them to individually work with each student to help them grow. Thank you.
All right. As a reminder, you can feel free to ask for a question to be repeated at any point in time. So we will now move to the second question. Why can't we have shorter vacation breaks and then end the school year before Memorial Day? Ms. Herman?
That's a great question.
Well, thank you. And I'm on the calendar committee, so I can speak from some knowledge of this. I've been on the calendar committee for 2 years now. And it seems simple, but that is the most complicated process because you have to have X amount of days per quarter, equal amounts in a semester, and you have to have your breaks for your semester breaks periods. Then you've got to put in X days for and spread and distribute them around for professional development, for teacher conferences. It is, someday you ought to take a look at all the things that they populate the calendar with all these must-dos, and then come in the yes buts. And so, interestingly enough, whether Christmas falls on a weekend or not kind of drives the whole process. I know, it sounds crazy. But why? Because, well, we just have so many things to accommodate, and I commend the calendar committee for doing the best they can to get school out by June, and that's, and then also accommodating snow days, which of course then bump things out. And so I think with the one we have under consideration for 2 years out, get school out by June 3rd, if there are no snow days. And so getting that Memorial Day weekend, Labor Day weekend is just a tough one. And I think it's a trade-off. People want 2 weeks at Christmas, and I understand why, and it's a great idea, but just bump it out on both ends.
Mr. Wiederspan, you have 1.5 minutes.
Can I ask you to repeat the question?
Yes. Why can't we have shorter vacation breaks and then end the school year before Memorial Day?
You mean Labor Day?
It says Memorial Day, but it probably means Labor Day.
I think so.
Okay.
So, and I think we have to be creative in the solutions that we have to the problems in the district and concerns just like that. I think one of the problems that we have is we continue doing things in the same way, and we wonder why people aren't happy with that, and we don't like the results we get. So specifically, I'm not quite sure. I don't work on the calendar committee, and I know those people have a yeoman's task of making everybody happy. You can't make everyone happy. But I do know one thing that has been talked about in the past, I'd like to bring it up, and that's the augmented school calendar. I know that it's not popular with a lot of people, and I'm not suggesting that I would be an advocate for doing it, but I think we need to have a conversation about it. And by that I mean, instead of having long breaks in the summer vacation would be spread out throughout the school year, and the breaks would be shorter. And, the other argument is it may have a positive impact on student achievement. Many teachers will tell you those kids lose a lot of the skills they had when they left school by the time they come back in the fall. Can't we be a little bit creative and maybe look at the possibility of an augmented school calendar that may address some of the concerns that person has? So, thank you.
Ms. Clausen, you have 1.5 minutes.
Well, I've heard that serving on the school board is a thankless job, and I think that this is one of those issues where you, as Mr. Wiederspan mentioned, you can't please everyone. I know as a parent, I do like those long summer days with my kids and Christmas breaks, and we have lots of friends who take trips even, they want that week at Easter break. And so this is one of those things where it's highly subjective, and I think you would probably have to survey parents to decide what they would prefer. And it sounds like the question was written by someone who would prefer to be out by that holiday weekend. But I'm sure you could find just as many people who would say they would prefer to have the longer breaks.
Mr. Legeski, you have 1.5 minutes.
So the question is to have shorter breaks and get out of school earlier.
Yes, sir.
That's the greatest question. I'm all for that. And while we're at it, why don't we just make it so that high school students don't have to start so darn early in the morning. They're high schoolers. Let them sleep in a little bit in the morning. So anyway, I'm all for that question.
Awesome. Ms. Rooney, you have 1.5 minutes.
Thank you. I've actually been on that calendar committee, I don't know, it's 4 or 5 years or longer. So it is a fine art. Marguerite and I have both served on that committee. I will tell you on that, we have teacher contract days that have to be met. They have to be balanced quarters and semesters, and it comes into teacher contract. It actually goes into CTEA member is there to monitor and talk about what we need to do there. If we started earlier in the school year, what we found out there was that we had schools that don't have air conditioning. So those schools mid-August, no air conditioning, not a good idea. So we couldn't push the year up, the school year up that way so we could get out earlier. Last year was the first time that we've even come close to getting finished at the Memorial Day weekend. And I think we were like right there, if I'm correct, Paulette. But we did do a survey. We did a Survey Monkey 2 years ago, sent it out. We had like a response of over 5,000 people, and the response on that survey for the calendar committee for that exact question was to keep it exactly the same. It was shocking. I couldn't believe it. So I understand all of it. The other thing that comes into is childcare. that's another thing that we wrestle with that, as well as all of the things that Marguerite talked about. So great question, and I wish there was a better answer, but I think we're always going to be within this time frame.
Ms. Russell, you have 1.5 minutes.
Thank you, this is a great question. While I understand that making a year-long school calendar can be very complex, kids, students, teachers, staff, mid-May rolls around and we're done. It's a struggle. You have done so much over that school year, learning and growing and, being with your peers. They're done. This is a great question that's been brought up amongst my peers during my campaign. I participated in the survey that Roseanne was just talking about, and I just feel like we can look at other districts who have a different schedule. That doesn't mean we have to do what they do, but I think it's always great to get creative and see what other areas are doing and see if we could possibly implement the things that they do. They have a different calendar year in some districts altogether. Their breaks are shorter. I always think you can take a look and meet those contractual days while taking a look at your breaks and saying, what am I willing to give up here in order to meet the end goal of getting out at Memorial Day? When we come back from Memorial Day, it's even harder than mid-May to hang on until the end of the first week of June. So that's a great question.
Ms. Ashby, you have 1.5 minutes.
Thank you. I don't know that there's a really good answer that says that we can't do that. We have all sorts of rules. I think there are conversations that need to continue to be had. We've heard all sorts of different options, starting later, going year round, all of these different things. I think are conversations that we need to continue to have to see if there are changes that need to be made over time. But again, it's amazing how different, there's one thing I've learned in the last 10 months is everybody sees it a little differently. And while whoever wrote that question would love to have shorter breaks, I would personally like the breaks to be a little longer. I'd like to do some additional things. And so, we're not going to meet the needs of everybody all the time, and we have to take into account a lot of those different things and make the best decisions we can at the time.
Ms. Gadlin, you have 1.5 minutes.
Thank you. I commend the calendar committee. It doesn't matter whether we have a snow day, we're happy. When we have a break, whether the break is long or short, we're happy. We have contract days that we have to be committed to, and that's the learning of our children. I'm going to end my question with saying the last day of school, no matter where, no matter when, we're all happy.
Would any of the candidates like an additional 30 seconds for comments?
I'll just add one thing, that discussion on the calendar committee is that over the years that teachers and parents and families have been surveyed, and the overwhelming, maybe some are willing to take a short Christmas break in order to get out earlier, and I'm sorry, it is Memorial Day, but that the overwhelming majority of teachers need the 2 weeks. They say the kids they're sick and they need 2 weeks to get healthy to come back. The families want 2 weeks. There's just a real support for that, and so I don't think it's going to change.
Mr. Wiederstein?
I was just going to comment. Tara made the comment about looking around and seeing what other people are doing. And I think that's a great idea. Sometimes, virtually half of the school districts in Colorado have a 4-day school week. So, and I know in Laramie County too, they have a 4-day week. So I think there's some creative options. I think we can talk to them and say, how's this working? Is this something that we would like to implement, or maybe it's not for us? But Ms. Ashby said the board needs to be discussing these things.
Ms. Clausen?
I would just add that I think that's why you need to have a parent's perspective on the school board as well, because we see things a little bit differently with our children being home, trying to take trips or visit family during holidays. It's hard to get away when they're in school. So a lot of times we use that time. So it's good to have that counter voice to weigh in on these kinds of things that come up.
Ms. Rooney?
Just a quick note on the 4-day school week, and that has gotten kicked around multiple times, and I would like to explore that. Depends on who you talk to, on where they're at with that. But one of the things that I've talked to parents about is what do we do with childcare for that day? Because mom and dad are working, that child is not in school, and they can't pay for daycare. So right now, that would be an issue.
Ms. Russell?
I think that there's room to be creative in this venture, and while it is hard, if you have a household with 2 full-time working parents, 1 full-time working parent, it can differ, and so childcare can be hard. And while I think everybody always has the best interest of kids and students, I think that would be an opportunity to reach out to the community that we live in and see how could maybe we partner or find assistance for that type of thing.
So I think the interesting part about this is that the reason a lot of those districts have gone to 4-day weeks is financial. And I think if we continue to see cuts or changes to our budgets as we go along, I think you'll start to see people get much more creative.
I believe that our school board has been very creative throughout the years that I've worked for Laramie County School District number 1. Been there for 38 years, and I think we've tried it all except for the 4-day week. And every year, we reach out to our parents, to our stakeholders, and we do the best that we can.
Our third question is, how will you ensure there is equity in school sports funding and non-sports activities? Additionally, is it possible for Laramie County School District number 1 to have more sports options or extracurricular activities for students? Mr. Wiederspan, you have 1.5 minutes.
Thank you, that's a great question. Funding equity with regard to different sports has always been a problem in the district. I don't know how you solve that. It seems to me like the more popular sports like football and basketball get the majority of the funding. There are options that we don't have in the district like lacrosse and some other things. Soccer is certainly a big push now, and it's gotten even bigger all the time. I think our school board needs to look at the budget specifically in conjunction with the superintendent and have discussions about how are we funding individual sports and why are our priorities the way they are? Is it driven only by popularity? Those sports that most students want to be involved in, are those the ones that will get the most money? I think that's probably true. And football and basketball and those kinds of things are certainly popular because you draw a large attendance area from the community. But I think the athletic coordinator in the school district, the superintendent, and the board should be involved in discussions about that, because I think it's critically important, and obviously the person that wrote that question thinks there's a problem and it should be corrected. So, thank you.
Ms. Clausen, you have 1.5 minutes.
Would you repeat the question?
Yes. How will you ensure there is equity in school sports funding and non-sports activities? Additionally, is it possible for Laramie County School District number 1 to have more sports and extracurricular options for students?
I think that given our current educational funding crisis that we're in as a state, that's kind of dependent on our actual resources. I do think that, as Mr. Wiederspan mentioned, you need to find out too what the level of interest is and how much we can devote as far as resources to various sports that aren't already funded or aren't funded equally. I would, as a trustee, want to hear from the community, want to learn more about the sports that are being proposed or the clubs or groups that would like to have more equal funding and understand what they're getting now if they have the support to sustain their activity and work with the superintendent, the athletic directors, and other stakeholders on that issue to find out how we could accommodate their funding.
Mr. Radesky, you have a minute and a half.
Well, I think the idea that there would be equitable funding for boys' sports and for girls' sports is really critical. Girls are great athletes, and in the past, the educational system really put a lot of their effort and funding into boys' sports. And so I am really happy to see that that's been changed, and I think that should continue to be, to have equal funding between the boys and girls. Now, as far as additional sports or outside activities, so the activities that I see in the high schools now, not just the sports, but the activities, are pretty nice, pretty fantastic. And so I think probably rather than adding more to it, I would say just make sure that what the outside groups are funded and supported.
Ms. Rooney, you have a minute and a half.
Thank you. I think that's a great question, and coming from, I played basketball at Wheatland and grew up playing basketball. My brothers all played basketball. The funding was not equitable between the two programs. Our program was relatively new, and the boys had a well-established program. So I think that's better, but we still have some inequities, but you have to realize that the Wyoming Athletic Association drives a lot of that ship. The legislature also with funding. So we have, we recently, between the budget cuts, caused the Wyoming Athletic Association to cut several of the speech meets, how far we travel for our football games, basketball games. We're picking up, like, right now they did a trip recently, 3 volleyball games in a row, like Friday, 2 on Saturday, between Gillette, Sheridan, and one other one, Buffalo. Yeah, Gillette, Buffalo, Sheridan. So they did three games in one swoop to save money. So we have a lot, the budget is going to really determine a lot of that. But I still think a school board should look at all of those numbers and make sure that they can make it as fair as possible. And hopefully partner with the city for extracurricular activities to save money. Thank you.
Ms. Russell, you have a minute and a half.
Extracurriculars, whether it's speech, theater, drama, debate, volleyball, basketball, athletics, they are all great avenues for any student that wants to pursue them. I feel like it gives them a place where they find other like-minded individuals. It can make them feel like they are part of something bigger than themselves, regardless of what kind of team that they are on. I would always want to try and offer as many of those types of things that we could to students, whether our entire student body participates in any of them or not would be their choosing. I don't feel like that would be something that should drive a decision on whether we take something away extracurricularly, unless the number of it was dwindling and the cost of it was going up. I always feel like there's creative avenues that you can explore as far as funding for those, whether that's individual teams doing fundraisers throughout their school year to help with trips or to offset the costs of meets or whatever it may be. And that also might include redrawing the boundaries or the lines of how we say this school travels to this school and it all encompasses a certain area to cut down on costs there. Maybe an athletic team doesn't get new uniforms every year. Things like that I think we can do to try and offset some of those costs.
Ms. Ashby, you have a minute and a half.
So I think I would need more information as to what the concern was about the imbalance. Is it a men's and women's team? Is it a new team versus, or a new activity? I need more information to know what we perceive the inequity to be. Because no, there shouldn't be blatant inequality, but there may be real legitimate reasons why that inequality exists, whether that be the cost of the sport itself, or the materials needed to put on a play, those kinds of things. And so I think there needed to be discussion about what the inequality was and why it exists, and if it truly does need to be adjusted and dealt with. As far as adding more activities, I think if there is enough interest and support, I think that is something to have a conversation about, see if it fits in the budget. I think there are things that we aren't doing that may be allowed, may be acceptable. There also may be other ways that we can bring them in. I know there's club teams, club sports, or in the community, there's different ways to bring those in as well. And so I'm not against it, and I think it's worth taking a look at.
Ms. Gadlin, you have a minute and a half.
First, I think we should review the current situation and the causes for why we have these extracurricular activities. Equal is not always fair, but I think if you identify the goal that you're trying to reach, if it's equal opportunities for girls or boys, or what's best, what activity is best for our students. After you identify your goal, you identify the obstacle that's in the way of achieving that goal. You identify and recruit others who can share my goals and your goals, and it's important that my goals become our goals. Create a collaborative plan to achieve the goal with inclusions and benefits of achieving it and consequences for not. Develop an ongoing process for continuing to evaluate the effectiveness once the goal is achieved. So if the goal is more sports, equal sports, let's identify the problem first, and then move on from there.
Ms. Herman, you have a minute and a half.
Thank you. So I was interested that the question talked about equity, not equal. And so I would have to say that some sports, like football, is very expensive. That with travel, the equipment, the use of, my kids didn't play football, so I'm not familiar with, but I know it's a high ticket item. As opposed to speech and debate, where everyone wears a suit and you have one coach and you do have a lot of travel. But so I think about being equitable, again, not equal, because some activities are going to be more expensive than others. And I think, and it's probably good to survey every few years and say, how are we doing? Our activities are funded by the legislature on a per pupil basis. It comes to the district and then we portion it out. And I like the idea of sports being no-cut teams, even though I know it leaves a lot of kids on the bench, but everybody who wants to go out, so I don't believe in changing that. I like having no-cut teams. But I think, and then the legislature said, well, why, you're going to have to charge fees for athletics. And I think our district rightly wants to make activities not dependent on the resources of a family. I think we should say, what do students want to do, what contributes most to their success in school and beyond, and then put our resources there. I think, and then make them available to everybody.
Would any candidate like 30 seconds? Mr. Lee, respond?
Thank you. I just got to thinking about this, and I think, we as board members are representatives of the community. And this is a conversation that needs to happen at the community level. Now, the Wyoming High School Athletics Association can be influenced by the community. So if there are enough people that want changes in the way this issue is dealt with, I think they're probably going to respond to it. They've been doing the same things in the same way over and over for a long, long time. But the community really needs to drive this discussion.
All right, our last question is, if students are on track to graduate, why should students have to take 7 classes? Ms. Clausen, you have a minute and a half.
Boy, I'm not sure I know a ton about that issue. I think that it is important for us to be expanding our career pathways for our students. And I love the idea of our district offering different types of educational opportunities, especially to keep students on track to graduate. So as far as that issue, I think I definitely support having technical and vocational training, apprenticeships and internships, life skills training, those kinds of things for students that are getting tired of school, maybe not on the college-bound track, but we provide opportunities for them to get training in school that will prepare them for a job outside of just past graduation. So I think those kinds of things are important and good, and I definitely support that. As far as having to take 7 classes for other purposes, I'm not sure I know enough to speak on that issue, I'm sorry. But I would definitely, just to add, you know, in making decisions, if I am elected to the board, one thing I always do in making decisions, and certainly would do as a policy board member, is to research out all of the issues and make sure I understand all the perspectives.
Mr. Radesky, you have 1.5 minutes.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes, sir. If students are on track to graduate, why should students have to take 7 classes?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't agree with that at all. I think that at the beginning of high school, the students should know what they're required to learn in order to graduate. And if they are able to have those learning happen where they've reached those goals, then they shouldn't have to take any more classes. If they can graduate after their junior year, God bless them. You know, so if they have specific goals that they know that they need to meet, and they meet those goals at their time. So I think this idea of requiring seat time is not a good idea.
Ms. Rennie, you have 1.5 minutes.
Thank you. Actually, this was brought up with my daughter because I was on that committee when we made that policy for the kids to do that. So she's like, what are you thinking? But I have to tell you what the group thought on that. So that was Policy Committee, Subcommittee 3, 2-3 years ago. And the point of that was talking about kids enriching their education. So having the ability to take an elective when they had that, you know, in that 7th hour, they could do an elective. They could take an additional math class. They could go back and do that science area that they wanted to in their career path, you know, to actually enrich and have the opportunity. So we, as a group of educators, not me, but the rest of them, you know, I'm the parent, but looked at this and went, okay, so how can we make this better for our kids? So preparing them going into a career, so as an elective, like college or a technical career, let's go ahead and encourage them to do that. So if you don't have to, normally you don't take it. But if you do, then you know, we got them into some of those enrichment classes. And so that was the mindset in a short version of that policy committee meeting. Thank you.
Ms. Russell, you have 1.5 minutes.
I think that offering electives for enrichment is a great idea. I feel like we should always try to offer as many different types of classes or programs that we can, because each individual student and their interests are different. Every student is not college bound. We have a lot of students that will be technical and vocational. We have a lot of students that will maybe join the military. Every student has different pursuits. I feel like if a student is on track to graduate, I don't feel like they should be required, I guess, to fill their schedule with electives that they may not be interested in, or they may not need, or they might not want to do. Great question.
Ms. Ashby, you have a minute and a half.
So I'm a little split on this question, very honestly. I understand how the policy committee got to where they did. I believe that we are not just preparing kids for careers, college and military, but we're actually preparing them to be citizens. And so those graduation requirements are sort of the foundation. Those extra classes that they may need to take in those other cases prepare them for different things. They give them different skills, they gave them different interactions, different knowledge. However, I can also see the point and would love to have been a fly on the wall in this policy committee. To hear, I get the point that if students are ready and have a direction and are ready to graduate, I can also buy the argument that we should let them go.
Mrs. Gatlin, you have a minute and a half.
I believe that the district should help students toward their chosen path following graduation, be it college, career, or military. I support offering post-secondary options to students in high school, such as dual and concurrent enrollment courses, as well as opportunities to earn certificates and associate degree before high school graduation. Let's invite students and their parents to support a strategic plan for students to pursue their path for higher education and for them to have a choice in whether they want to take the 7 credits or they just want to graduate.
Ms. Herman, you have a minute and a half.
Well, just mention briefly that the Wyoming legislature, in an attempt to save money, has decreases the funding per pupil if they don't attend all day. So there's that kind of an added incentive. But and just to reflect what people said, the thought is that if students don't need to be in class for 7 periods, they can go get a job, they can do whatever they want to pursue, and that's a good thing to get a job. But the thinking is that this is one of the few times in their whole lives that education is going to be free. And if you require 7 credits, they'll take, maybe the academically achiever will go take welding or vice versa, or use that time to go take something they've never explored for, creative writing, or maybe do a dual or concurrent enrollment at LCCC, get a college credit under their belt. And the idea is that, aside from the funding incentive from the legislature, is that this is an opportunity to do one of those life skills, something that might open up a venue for them, an idea, something new and enrich, it could change a course of life, probably won't, but, it will give them something new to explore once they graduate. And one of the things about the job is that what I know that our district is looking into, turning that into a course, so make it educational, have objectives, and really make it educational, and so they can get a credit for it.
Mr. Wiederspun, you have a minute and a half.
Well, this is really a great question, and I guess I have a couple of thoughts, and some of my colleagues here have mentioned it, but what I think would be appropriate is to sit down with the individual who's going to be graduating early, sit down with the principal and the child and the student's parents, and say, how can we enhance this individual's education? They're going to be, do they need to continue going to school for the remainder of the year? Would it make sense for them to leave early? And make a decision in that regard. We have a memorandum of understanding with Laramie County Community College that allows students to do dual and concurrent enrollment, as some people have mentioned. What an opportunity for a high school student to get credit during their high school years at the college. They can take advanced classes. They can work in the area of the trades if they choose to go into the trades. I think those are the students that I think we've forgotten for the most part, because we're always focusing on students going to 4-year colleges after high school. Well, all students don't want to go to college after high school. Some of them want to be plumbers, and they want to be mechanics, and they want to be, they want to be carpenters. We need those people in our society, and I think we need to really encourage that. See if that's going to work for that student, and give them some options. That's what I would do. Thanks.
Ms. Ashby?
So one of the things that has happened in the last 6 months is the governor has mandated or has put out a goal for us to have 65% of our population have a post-secondary certificate or degree by 2030, I think. Don't quote me on that. 2025, Christine says. By having that extra hour and allowing them to have access to these options, whether they be CTE certificates that we are offering, we have a new program out at Triumph that is giving an internship, those kinds of things I think would be really helpful in that goal.
Thank you. Ms. Russell?
I agree with how offering these things are great, and I support all of them. I would just say not every student is going in the same direction as each other. And I just know if we were to require a student to take an elective that they were not interested in, I don't see how that would be beneficial for the student or the teacher at that juncture.
I'll just answer on that if I could.
Okay.
Thank you, yeah. The thing about electives, at least in my experience in our district, is that it is just that. So they're not ever required to take a specific, and definitely, hopefully, I can't imagine a counselor putting them in an elective that they don't want to be in. But now that post-secondary accountability is in the accountability model, I think we're going to see a shift to the plus in getting our kids more, hitting that goal of post-secondary readiness. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to use their 30 seconds? Ms. Dawson?
I was just going to quickly comment that I think offering kids that aren't college-bound, especially those opportunities for training, has been, by teachers I've talked to, held up as an opportunity to try to keep those kids in school to graduate and to make it to graduation, because they see the end game and they see that they're working towards some life skills or some vocational skills that they can use after graduation.
Mr. Witherspoon?
I'd just like to reinforce Christy's point, because I think that's really critical. You know, these students that really don't see a future in the school district are dropping out early. And one of the goals, of course, is to graduate as many students as possible, increase graduation rates. That's an excellent way to do it. Make school more meaningful for them individually, and they'll stay in school.
All right, so now I'm sorry.
And I believe by giving children, parents a choice, and with a strategic plan of what they want to do, we can achieve high goals for our children, whatever path they choose.
Now each candidate will have 2 minutes to add anything that they would like to, or to sum up their campaign and those types of things. Mr. Rogeski, you have 2 minutes.
You know, I looked at the candidates for the school board. I've followed Christy pretty well, and Roseanne, and I hear this from a lot of the other members. A lot of really good educational ideas. And I think it's very important for the board to work together. And that's what I would do. But just like I said at the beginning, my biggest skills and what I have to offer, and I think it's very, very important for the school board, is, you know, what facilities do we use? How do we use them? How are they being maintained? The buses and all the facilities. So that skill that I have is very important to the school district, and I'm willing to take my time to help the school district to be better because of with their facilities. But at the same time, I would work closely with the members of this board that are really focusing on the students, that is really important. I would work with them closely to keep a board that works together.
Ms. Rooney, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Again, this has been an honor and pleasure to be a part of this group, so thank you again for doing that, having us all here. I just wanted to touch base with a little bit of my experience in the district. One of the things that is amazing about this district, sitting on some of the internal committees and working through that, and I'm sure several of the board members can say the same thing, in the fact that just to the length that the decisions are made, the number of representatives that are at that table, I think it's important that parents are at that table. I think it's important that we engage our community and that accurate information goes out to our community. And I see the position as a board member to make sure that we have a real understanding about how those decisions were made, what players were at the table, what groups were represented, and where those suggestions and recommendations are actually coming from. And I also think that it's important that we're engaged in our community, because we see a lot of things within our school district, but some of the things over the last 13 years is you hear, we have 135 or 125 homeless children going to school in our district. And you say that to a community member, and when I first shared that with some of the individuals from my church, they just said that just isn't possible. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's possible. And actually that's just the number that they can put on that's just going from couch to couch. We have behavioral issues that happen at our school, that we've got amazing behavioral plans that have been put in place. There is a lot of complexity in this, and I view this position as a full-time job. I mean, to really have a great grip on what's going on and where these decisions are being made and who's at that table, it's a full-time job, and that's the way I look at that, and that's the way I would take this position. Thank you very much.
Ms. Russell, you have 2 minutes.
I am running for a seat on this Board of Trustees because I am vested. I'm fully vested. I'm a parent of 2. I think it's important to have a diverse board, and I think a parent perspective is very important in doing that. I'm an educator, so I think that gives me knowledge of things that are happening within the school level. I want to continue to make a positive impact and change for all students across the district, not just my own. And I would like to see more involvement as a board as far as the day-to-day operations of a school go. I think a student perspective is highly important, and that's why we're all here. And I feel like we could do a little better job at hearing more of our student body out and seeing their needs, because they go to school every day, and what better way to find out the needs of our districts than asking students and staff and teachers. So that's part of why I'm excited to see this campaign out with everybody, and thanks again for having us.
Ms. Ashby, you have 2 minutes.
I'm sure I'm timing that correctly. So school has always been my thing. I was good at school. I was kind of a nerd. Everybody's shocked, I'm sure. And I grew up being very passionate about that education, knowing full well as I got older that my skills didn't necessarily lend themselves well to the classroom. But I'm a strong believer that education is important. As I got older and I had children, I have a child at Hobbs and a child at McCormick. It became obvious that education looked a little different than I thought it had when I was younger. I have one child with a learning disability and one that is much more interested in being social than spending her time in the classroom. And so I had to take a step back and really think about what it meant for them to be successful in this district. And I believe that I have some skills that I can bring to this board, continue to bring to this board, that allow us to look at all those needs. I have extensive background in working with people, facilitating conversations, facilitating discussions, and looking for solutions. And I think I've already brought some of that to the board that exists now, and believe that I can continue to help us look at, I think, some things that we're going to have to make some hard decisions on in the future. I also bring a lot of background in the community, both my job and my inability to say no. Means that I've served on a whole lot of boards, and I've done a lot of board training, so I have a very strong background in governance. I understand my role in what the board is, and I bring an ability to connect our community, to bring us out of a silo and make sure that we are talking with our community and helping our kids integrate into the community we live in.
Ms. Cadlin, you have 2 minutes.
I'm going to share a little bit about who I am and what I would like to do as a school board member. I am qualified and I've earned a bachelor's degree in elementary education and a master's degree in curriculum and instructions. I have been employed with Laramie County School District for 38 plus years. I began as a secretary. I went on to become a teacher for 26 years, and I moved on and became an instructional facilitator for 9. I'm prepared and I've had the experience. Now I would like to share what I would like to do. As a teacher, I saw your children as my children, and as a board member, I would continue to do the same by promoting policies that ensure that our children receive the best education possible. I will ensure that all students' educational goals are respected and will establish policies that prepare students for college, vocational education, military, or whatever their future goals may be. I believe that the school board should be a model of collaboration in our community, and I will have an open door policy and be available to anyone in the community who's interested in the education of our children. I believe I'm qualified. Your concerns become my concerns, and together we can make this district even better than what it is at this present time. Thank you.
Ms. Herman, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, and just to start to say, I've moderated several of these forums before, and Katie Smith has done a fantastic job. You're a natural, I will have to say, so thank you for your Good. This is civics in action, folks. Okay, start my statement. I have used the phrase, a trustee you can trust, for my school board campaign 4 years ago and also this year. You entrust your children and their education, their complete education, to this board. You trust us to write strategic plans, write policy, and hire an excellent superintendent, and to make sure those plans and policies are carried out, goals are met, and we have the very best administrators, teachers, staff, and buildings we can to provide a quality education. So I am a trustee you can trust. You can trust me to be diligent, to attend board meetings, do my homework, work with other trustees, participate on policy, audit, and rec mill committees and boards. You can trust me to learn the facts and ask the tough questions before I make a decision. You can trust me to be available to students and parents, to the community, to be transparent and open, open to fellow trustees and to employees of the district, to talk about educational issues. I'm always available. You can trust me to advocate for our district to policymakers and lawmakers. Yes, we all have affiliations and loyalties to groups and areas of the city, but I will leave mine at the door. You can trust me to be independent, to be a trustee with undivided loyalty to the students in Laramie County School District 1, all of them, all of the time. And I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Mr. Wiederspahn, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. So let me just say, first of all, that it's been a privilege to sit in this room and exchange ideas with these great candidates. And whoever is elected from this group of people, I think the school district is going to be well served. So it's been a privilege to exchange ideas with all of you. So I've got a number of concerns, but I've identified a couple that I'd like to address. One is, there's a debate going on right now in Casper between gubernatorial candidates. And one of the things they're talking about is education funding in the state. This is really a scary thing that's going on. I'm really troubled by it, and I have a feeling it's going to negatively impact our students. I don't see any creative ideas coming out of the legislature. I hope that there are a lot of things going on that I'm not aware of, but I'm just afraid that our students are going to suffer, and I hope that's not the case. Our students need to compete in a global economy. The school districts need to be funded adequately in order for us to provide the kind of education that those students need. I just read in the paper the other day that ACT scores are down for 2018. That bothers me. Some people will say, well, you know, what does that really mean? That, you know, that's a summative test. It really doesn't tell us much. ACT scores open a lot of doors for students. So it bothers me when our test scores aren't going up. I think we can do better. As a parent and a former principal, I do believe that students rise to the level of expectations that you have for them. And if we don't have high expectations for our students, they're never going to get there. We can't accept mediocrity, and sometimes I think we do. There's a lot of talent out there and a lot of bright students, and sometimes I think they just need to be challenged to the point where they pull more out of them than they ever believed that they had. And that we need to engage the community in order to get all of that happening. It would be a privilege for me to serve on the board. I would ask for your vote. Thank you so much.
Ms. Clausen, you have 2 minutes.
Well, I also want to say thank you to the League of Women Voters for holding this forum tonight, to commend you, Ms. Smith, on the job you've done, and to commend my colleagues for this great forum tonight. As I touched on briefly earlier, as a trustee, I would work to improve our student outcomes through academic growth and proficiency, expanding career pathways for students, and supporting policies that give students the individualized instruction they may need to maximize their potential. I would carefully manage our district resources and prioritize funding for the classroom and to student learning. I would prioritize school security and safety, ensuring our district personnel have the proper resources and training that they need on school security, and continually evaluating and implementing measures to secure our facilities. I would also provide responsive leadership as a board member, listen to the concerns and input of our parents and our community, promote greater communication between our school board and all of the stakeholders, and to serve the needs of our district impartially. As I mentioned before, my background, one thing I didn't mention is my education. I have a bachelor's and master's degree in history, but I have been in our school facilities, quite a few of them. I know what our classrooms are like and what our teachers face on a day-to-day basis. I understand the challenges and opportunities of our district. I have a vested interest as a parent in building upon the success of our district, and I bring that parent's perspective. And I have a professional background, the skills and the experience to be an effective leader. So having said that, I hope you will consider me, and I would respectfully ask for your vote on November 6th. Thank you so much.
Candidates, when I saw the questions that the students had written, my first words to Katie were, these are so student-centric questions, aren't they? And aren't you glad we ran out of time? Just trust me on what was awaiting you. So that concludes tonight's League of Women Voters election forum. Would you take a moment to thank these candidates for coming out tonight? Can we give them applause? agree with whoever said, I just wish we didn't have to vote just for 4, right? So be sure to read the Wyoming Tribune Eagle for more coverage for all the races in Laramie County. And remember to vote, right? November 6th. Good night. Thank you.